Hello, Senator, and welcome to the Madison County Tea Party.
Hey, good to be with you. I wish I could have been there in person, but this will have to be the next best thing.
Yep, duty calls, and you're doing the job that we elected you to do. So thank you for serving us in DC.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, first question I want to ask you is why are you running for governor of Indiana?
Well, I think you guys know it. And when I said I was going to run for senator, big believer in term limits. I would have never reneged on uh, running for more than 2 terms. And I've been here now over 5 years, and we've gotten a lot done. This is easier than running a business. You just got to be smart enough, ideally, not to spend more than you take in and have some good ideas that, kind of shrink government and grow enterprise. And proud of the record that we put in place. But I've been asked to consider running for governor because people know I've come from the entrepreneurial, Main Street entrepreneurial, not corporate side of life. And you're set the agenda as a governor, and life is never simple. It was either or. And if I wanted to do that, it would have been another 9 years down the road, and I may be hunting and fishing full time by then. So to me, I felt, especially with what I saw happen in our own state, I never imagined when we went through a crisis that we'd have our own state government declare one business essential, another non-essential, how we kind of extended the power of government. It was on steroids here, and it was happening even in states like our own. So that won't happen under me. And I view the opportunities. We're a good state. We're all lucky we live in Indiana, but we really haven't had folks become governors that have signed the front side of a paycheck. They generally come from the farm system of politics. I don't. That's how I took out 2 sitting congressmen and a senator. And I felt there was just more opportunity to come back home. And I worked my tail off to become a senator, but I wasn't going to do that more than 2 terms anyway.
Okay, so what are the first three things that you'll do as governor?
Well, number one, I'm going to go, it's the biggest business in our state, 30,000 employees, give or take, 30 agencies. I'll go through each one of them and make sure they're responding to the people they're regulating, make sure they're staffed properly. Many cases are going to be overstaffed. And if you want to take our state to where we get rid of the income tax, you'll have to do it by generating savings in how we run the government. I feel that's what I did for 37 years in an environment much tougher when you got competition nipping at your flanks and you're fully on recourse for any of the financial mistakes you might make. Here again, we've got a state government that runs pretty well by cash flow measurement. Does that mean we're cash flowing too well? Are we getting return on investment in the places that we maybe need a better one? High healthcare costs, more bang out of our education buck. Uh, I'll look at that first. And then the 2 issues I hear most about that impact everyone would be workforce. It's worse now than it was pre-COVID. We still put way too much emphasis on what we only need 1/3 of, and that would be post-secondary degrees. We need to make sure that parents are in the driver's seat for their own kids' education, along with kids once they get older, and make sure that they can do the basics and come away from high school with some life skills that'll make your career valuable regardless of what you do. I'm going to take on the biggest interest group in our state, as well as I have here in DC, when we try to lower our own healthcare costs. We got some of the poorest results in the country, and we pay some of the highest costs. No one would touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'm looking forward to it. Those would probably be the first three things. Make sure government is running efficiently, staffed with people from the outside, not just career bureaucrats, and then take the two biggest issues for most families, their well-being health-wise and their well-being in terms of education. And a bunch of other issues come below that, which I'm going to make sure we deal with as well, if you'd want to hear more.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, let's talk about Lieutenant Governor. Many of our members here are supporting Micah Beckwith for lieutenant governor. And I know that he has spoken with you. He's spoken with each candidate for governor. And we just want to know where you stand on the lieutenant governor issue.
So he called me actually before he decided to do it, because I've known Micah since he's come out to DC with a leadership group that he
Hmm.
spearheaded, and I think almost every year since I've been here. Uh, like where he comes from philosophically. And when he said, well, will that make a difference? I said, hey, go for it. If you can convince delegates that you're the one that needs to be lieutenant governor, that's fine with me. I don't like to impinge upon any process where you've got the right to do it, number one. And that's kind of like when the establishment said I could never win the Senate race. Well, uh, I like people that think they can do the impossible, especially when it's coming from a point of view of where you're wanting to kind of streamline government, accentuate the private side, and then also maybe build a culture that reflects Hoosiers into our state government and the way we do things. And I think Micah would come from there. So I wished him well, and it looks like he's working his tail off.
He sure is. He sure is. Okay, well, some of your opponents have hit you hard over the law enforcement, the
Yeah.
police issue, and I'd like you to explain to our members where you stand on support for the police.
Well, it's ironic because that all comes from a point in time when it looked like it was going to gallop out of control here in DC. That's when we were, the other side of the aisle was talking about defunding police, the craziness, everything that happened through George Floyd, the riots in our biggest cities, including Indianapolis. And it looked like something could happen to where qualified immunity would be changed. That's not in code. That's a judicial ruling. We wanted to codify it to protect police in a way that would get rid of frivolous lawsuits for sure. It was Antonin Scalia that put the idea out there. But when it got down to it, local law enforcement didn't want to mess with it, period. We listened and dropped it. I'm the only one that's been endorsed by any law enforcement agency. The Indiana State Police did that just this week. Got a host of sheriffs supporting the effort. And it doesn't make, just because you get a dust up with Tucker Carlson, who I like. I was his last guest, by the way, before he went off the air. I think we were talking about Ukraine then. Even that got to where it was ahead of its skis. I think the guy that put that out there probably wasn't with him for long after, because sometimes things get misconstrued. Everybody knows I'm for law and order. I'm a conservative entrepreneur and safety, public safety. We're the only one that's got a really detailed plan out there to where law enforcement and the public can see it. That's why I got the Indiana State Police endorsement.
Okay, thank you. Well, what about taxes? You mentioned about getting rid of the income tax. I think that's what you said.
Yep.
So where do you stand on taxes for Indiana
So,
citizens?
so actually, the thing I hear more about than income taxes, Suzanne Crouch threw that out there in a
Yeah,
sensational way. That's a
yeah,
third of our revenue. So you're not going to axe a tax, but if you're smart at being a governor, you can run the government more efficiently and start lowering income taxes. Property
okay,
taxes by far would be the issue I've heard the most about. And we
yeah,
need to find a way constitutionally and legally to make sure property taxes never go up more than the growth of your economy. And that whole system got skewed by Bidenomics that unleashed inflation. And then it had a ripple effect on systems like ours that should reflect market trends, but not when it gets skewed. So we should have, with a quick legislature and a leader as a governor, done something immediately to have capped your property tax bills. A bill is a result of a local tax rate applied to an assessed value. So
hmm
we control taxes not being more than 1, 2, or 3% of assessed value, but that doesn't keep local jurisdictions from keeping a tax rate in place that's now applied to a higher assessed value, and that's how they can go up like they have. That impacts the folks at the lowest end of the income scale. We should have done something about it, and I would have been leading aggressively on it. And that'll be something that I'll try to flesh out between now and when I take office in terms of what we can do to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, yeah, I've heard more complaints about property tax
Yes.
than
If
anything
you're
else.
talking to
And
Hoosiers,
so,
they're concerned more about that because it
yeah,
impacted the elderly, fixed income, those at lower incomes disproportionately more.
yeah, right. Well, a real hot button issue right now is TikTok.
Yep.
Um, where do you stand on the TikTok issue?
So that is for someone like me that is a strong First Amendment civil liberties individual. I don't like restriction of anything when it comes to that. Uh, we should all have free speech and be able to live with what you're talking about or the consequences of what you're talking about. Here, when you're looking at TikTok, ByteDance, and every Chinese company has to interface with their own intelligence agencies.
Mhm.
I want TikTok to survive. I just don't like the current ownership having that close a relationship with our main geopolitical foe. So I think that if this works to where they just have to disgorge it, sell it, uh, I don't know that we should be trusting the Chinese on anything when they steal intellectual property. They're buying land up next to military bases. They've said they want to replace us, and I think their actions kind of foretell what they want to do. And it passed in a large bipartisan way in the House. Still gives me pause that I don't want the format impacted. I just think the ownership shouldn't have that cozy a relationship with the Chinese.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, Senator, I thank you for your time. It's a crazy busy day on Capitol Hill. I understand there's a budget deadline looming tomorrow, Friday. Is that right?
It
So,
is, and it looks like I'm going to be stranded here
yeah.
possibly through the weekend. So that's part of this job, and it's been a pleasure to serve Hoosiers. And just so you and your crew knows that I've been accessible. Anybody can visit me on a Friday, generally in my hometown. I visit all 92 counties. I've been up with you folks several times, and I'll continue to do that officially and when you elect me as your next governor as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.